Welcome. Welcome to our conversation. You are invited to participate in this conversation, you who are at home, but we who are in the studio have a glorious opportunity to talk together. And so we welcome our guest today, Kathleen Kolb, who is an artist in an exhibition that we're going to see and discuss this day, and Verandah Porche, who is a poet in so many marvelous ways. We're going to talk about that. So maybe the two of you could tell just a little bit about this exhibit, and then we'll have continued the conversation, and then we'll come back and we'll see pictures, and we'll read poetry as well. So,
all right, Len, thanks. This, as you said, this is an exhibition that's now on view at the Vermont Folklife Center. It will travel to other locations subsequently, but it's available now right in Middlebury, so that's great. The subject of the exhibition is the working forest, which for us, means largely human beings working in the forest, but the forest does plenty of work without us, and so there are images there that also pertain to the importance of the forested landscape in general for oxygen and clean water and habitat and all of those other wonderful things that we're dependent on. So Verandah and I have collaborated as a painter and a poet on creating work on this topic, and that's what the exhibition is.
And we called it Shedding Light on the Working Forest, in particular because anyone who sees Kathleen's paintings knows that the way that they're bathed in light is part of the fascination that there is. And also shedding light is such a wonderful idiom, like shedding grace,
Oh, very good. We're off to a good start. And I want to just hold up this book that you have created. It's a marvelous book with the pictures and the poems and your background and bibliography and just an incredible catalog.
And wonderful introductions.
And just, so this is the picture. We're going to come back to this, but I'd like to learn some things about the two of you. I know you've been friends for quite some time, but I'd like to take us back to the time before you met each other and when you were younger.
In the Stone Age.
And I wouldn't say that, but so sometime back there, who were the people or what were the events that helped to shape you to become a painter, an artist, and to help you to become a poet? And what's the story? What's your story? I think people out there would really appreciate knowing that.
Go ahead. Jinx.
All right. Well, let's see. If I think about, Len, where being an artist started for me, I don't have memory that goes back far enough. I remember loving it from my earliest toddler memories. I remember a Captain Kangaroo coloring book that we sent away for, and my parents enrolled me in, I grew up in the Cleveland, Ohio area. They enrolled me in classes at the art museum there when I was 6. So I started having, some formal engagement with art history and the fine arts when I was pretty young. And I just always found it incredibly compelling to make images. And the story that I enjoy about that from my childhood is one Sunday morning when my parents were still in bed. I'm the eldest of 6 kids. At the time, I think there were 3 of us extant at that moment. And they were still in bed, as young parents on the weekend try to be. And so the 3 kids, probably aged, 4, 3, and 2 or something, were playing in a bedroom. And I said, I have a great idea. We'll make a fort out of this furniture. We'll just move the little bookcases and we'll move the chair and it'll be this fort. And I will draw your pictures on the back of the bookcases so that anyone passing by will think it's a window and that you're inside the fort. And I was absolutely convinced that that would be an actual illusion that would be totally functional and that I would be able to master that at the age of 4. So that did start early for me.
Oh, yes, it did.
Oh, what a beautiful story.
It's a goofy story, but that's okay.
Well, we all have goofy stories. I was the youngest of 4 children, and lots of my students, I've worked as a poet in residence all over for many years, and people would say, well, how did you get your start? And so I just had to say it was in the bathtub with my rubber ducky. Now, I probably didn't have a rubber ducky. My mother wasn't the rubber ducky type. But
There's a story too.
I know. Well, she was anxious about germs. But I've seen as a parent the way that young children sing their day, that there's just no separation between being in the water and recapping the experience in a kind of sing-songy way. And I don't say I have that exact memory, but that sense of fluency between the word and the song and the water is something that resonates with me. And I went through phases. In elementary school, I got fascinated with rhyme, and unasked for, I began speaking in rhyme and writing in rhyme. And my mother saved a book report written entirely in rhyme that ended, because she was kind and had no greed, they called her the Angel of Henry Street. And that was about Lillian Wald and her settlement house. And the teacher actually said that greed and street didn't rhyme. And in a sense, that was where my poetry passion separated from school. You know, really, it was an internal thing. So I always turned words over and savored them. So that's good enough for a start.
Okay, that's great. So it's very clear from just the short time we've met and have had a chance to listen to you in these past events and look at your work. It was really a good day when the two of you became friends. And so what's it like to work with another person on a collaboration? A lot of people, when it comes to stories, they think, I don't have a story. That's the first thing. And then when they think they have a story, it's only their story. But in reality, if I listen to your stories, there are a lot of people involved with your stories. So you have any thoughts to share with the people who might be watching today about what it means to collaborate and to have partners and what the ups and the downs of that?
So Kathleen, did you ever collaborate with anybody intimately on a project before this one?
Well, a little bit with Peggy, teaching dance and drawing together. But nothing of this duration. And I have to say, my first response to the question is, it's really fun. It's incredibly fun to have the surprise of an entirely different mind enter into a process that you might have thought you had sole responsibility for or sole authority over. And suddenly it has the opportunity to go in some different directions and to expand in ways that you hadn't anticipated but are very grateful for.
And I've collaborated with people for many years, and my poetry practice developed, well, there was the strand of solitude and heartbreak and transformation that I guess most poets engage with, but also my political inclinations brought me in touch with a social mission, not to write propaganda, although I have no objection to that, but to want to broaden access to the word. And so I wrote my own poems, and I worked as a poet in the schools after publishing my first book, and moved toward collaboration as a way of life. I mean, moving to Vermont, we had a communal farm, Total Loss Farm, and that was a collaborative. We started a nonprofit called the Monteverde Artists Collaborative, and so sharing our labor was something always integral to me. And fast forwarding ahead, Kathleen and I worked together at the Governor's Institute on the Arts, which is a collaborative project bringing interdisciplinary arts and artists and students, high school students, together to create a community in what was an apprenticeship model where we're all learning together and sharing our struggles. And there was a real emphasis at the Institute on collaboration. And so, Kathleen, maybe you could say a little something about our cinder block friendship.
Right. So the Governor's Institute on the Arts is an intensive 2.5 week program that happens for a small group of maybe 120 Vermont high school students every summer. And it's a great program, and they install us, the conglomerate of faculty and students, in the cinder block housing that's available at the state college system, right? So that breeds a certain quality of companionship and relationship, to be stuck with people in cinder block housing for 2.5 weeks without hardly a day off, and eating cafeteria food and sharing sweets and space, so that very much as the students do in that program, there was a lot of bonding going on because of the intensity of the time. And so that really accelerates the development of a relationship. And I have to say, some of my most important friendships still are with people who I met at the Governor's Institute on the Arts. And it's also became my artistic community in Vermont in many ways. I mean, I know artists in other contexts, but the deepest, closest, clearest connections I have came out of the Governor's Institute.
And is that, how many years did you go
I taught
to
for 14 years, starting in 1990, which was when I met Verandah. And you were there for quite a long time.
I was there from the start. There were a few years that I wasn't there, but it was pushing 30 years that I did a poetry program and a collaborative program with Eugene Newman, a jazz musician, a marvelous person, and also taught kids how to do the practice that I came to do as a writing partner, how to be a collaborative scribe. You know, you started out talking about how so many people don't think that they have a story, how many people have said to us, well, I'm not creative, completely sidestepping what resourcefulness means. And ignoring and never asking themselves about the way they do the things they do. And so, moving back to Kathleen and me, I was still working at the Institute, and Kathleen returned to show her work. And it was so wonderful. A slide would come on the screen, and the kids would all go, ooh.
That's great.
It was fun, I have to admit.
And in the course of her showing, there were these paintings that evolved in a way that she will describe to you, of people working in the forest. And I felt that there was a role for me, that I needed to get closer to the unheard voices in those paintings.
Oh, that's a great introduction to maybe moving into this exhibit.
Right.
And we have some pictures, right, to
Yep,
show.
yes.
And we have some poems to be read. So let's begin with the first one, I think.
So this picture it's a painting of a broad view, and it's the largest painting in the exhibition, and frankly one of the most recent ones. The paintings in the exhibition span 20 years. But this one is of the view from the Long Trail looking west. It will be familiar to many people in Addison County as the view from Sunset Ledge on the Long Trail south of Lincoln Gap. And the reason it's part of the exhibition is because it shows that we live in the forest. And I think it's really important when thinking about the forest and human interaction to step back and see how important the trees are just for being. And we continue to learn more and more about what trees are and what they're capable of. And I know that our understanding of that will evolve to a point where this looks silly. But I wanted to start with a painting that really took in the big picture of the fact that we live in the great northern forest, and that in itself is a marvel.
It's a marvelous picture.
Well, thank you. So
Maybe we can then move on to one of the other pictures in the exhibition.
Oh, this was maybe the first painting that I fell in love with. I saw the body language of these two men, and I thought, I want to talk with them. I want to know them. And so I actually did get to talk to the skinny guy in the picture, Larry Sherman, who I hope he gets to listen to this show and hear how highly I think of him. You know, he had lost his son, and that was something we only talked about very briefly. And in the course of this project, I had a great tragedy in my life because in April of 2015, my husband was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and 47 days later he was dead. And that was a time when I had just begun interviewing the people in the paintings, and so I spent all of the time of his illness editing text and thinking about solidity and felling and grappling and what that meant. But anyway, this is the poem that I wrote, and it includes some of Larry's actual words. And so the painting is called Morning Work on the Landing. And of course, morning took on the other homonym meaning for me in the course of this. For Larry Sherman and Mark Sherman, 1976 to 2013. West Hill, Lincoln. Dawn, the chickadees kick in. Father and son are glad to be done with farming for nothing. 24/7 starving to death. And zero ain't so bad when you're dressed for it. The grapple holds aloft a log longer than the man who felled it, snow on the bark. The loader will never tuck this one in the truck bed, and the sun won't snug it with his bar. Gazing back, the father says, "This painting is right on the money." The red hat the blue cab, the shadow they stand in between fell and grapple. Everyone's life is a book, he adds. What leaves his sun won't turn, let's overlook, like this valley, or the empty mountain dew, not littering the forest floor. So there's a teeny bottle of Mountain Dew that you, Kathleen, will you point?
It's up on the edge of the truck bed. And the reason, I mean, it was there, I saw it there, but I was so taken with this bright burst of gem-like green color that I enjoyed painting it. But it signified something to Verandah.
Yeah, I mean, that they could have flung it on the floor.
Sure.
And they put it carefully there, and then, of course, Mountain Dew, you know, there it was. But, I mean, this also sheds light on my process because I wanted each participant to be the ambassador to this project. They had the key to this exhibition. And so I said to Larry and to each other person, tell me what I need to know to enter this painting. And so this is my poem, but he also told me a lot of stuff about what was going on here. And the participants were very familiar with these paintings, and they loved Kathleen. They loved the fact that she got it right, that this painting is right on the money. And so the outreach part of this was some of the most meaningful matter, you know, when it comes right down to it, that these people are seen and heard.
Let's look at the next painting, because that was so much fun. The next image is, I believe, is Loggers at Sunrise, yes. Which is another logging scene in Lincoln, but Verandah, would you
Yes, so
share?
what the person who is speaking in this told poem, told to me, is Joe Gilkerson, who is the son of the guy in the green hard hat, and this is the end of his whole narrative and the part that's about this painting, Logging at Sunrise. When I first saw this, I got a lump in my throat because that's my dad's spitting image. The guy in the green hard hat, that's my dad. A little white speck in his hand, that's a camel. The gentleman with his back to us is sharpening the saws. From the look of the smoke, they probably just gave the truck a shot of ether. Those early cold mornings. I've been to 22 different countries. I'll tell you, to this day, when it's cold out and I smell that diesel exhaust, immediately I feel that I'm back on the header again.
That's great. Powerful image.
And powerful words, too. And as Verandah reads that, I'm moved by the connections that she created in eliciting the stories of the men in the paintings, because I did not have the courage to do that when I was looking for the material for the paintings. I didn't engage as nearly, hardly at all. And Verandah really engaged deeply with all these people and fearlessly, and they responded very openly by sharing important stories about what's in the paintings, which made the paintings more meaningful to me and certainly make them more meaningful to people in the exhibition.
Okay. Thank you. Do we have a couple more?
There's a couple more images coming up. This one's included because it's set in Middlebury. This is the power plant at the Middlebury College. This was part of a big project that I worked on previous to this collaboration that was called Art of Action. This one and the next painting were both part of that project, which were the goal.
It was yesterday, right?
Art of Action?
Art of Action Day.
I don't know, was
Yeah,
it?
it was yesterday.
I had no idea. I thought yesterday was International Women's Day.
Yeah.
Both.
Perfect. You can't get a better combination. Art and action and women.
And women.
There you go.
right.
Okay, so here we are celebrating that.
I agree.
So yeah, and then this also was part of that project, and this is another one where Verandah can read.
Oh yeah, and this is another poem that I wrote, and the painting is called Fuel of the People for Dan and Sally Ober, Lincoln, Vermont. And there's a reference to this of everything that's not a bobcat. You know, there's flakes and falls from chiseled maple, and Leonardo da Vinci, no, was it Leonardo da Vinci?
Michelangelo.
Oh, heavens, how could I be so? Okay, yeah, Michelangelo talked about the process of sculpting, you know, that everything that isn't David, you know, you remove
Yeah.
from the stone. And Dan Ober, who is the wood carver, referenced in this poem, had reminded me of that. Okay, Fuel of the People for Dan and Sally Ober, Lincoln, Vermont. Sally is the town clerk. Home smoke over whipped snow. The village idles in the thick of winter. The town clerk and her wood carver will cross the path from labor to dinner. Births or deaths pronounced among her liens and permits salted away. Everything that's not a bobcat flakes and falls from chiseled maple. In a heartbeat, he will close the shop. Cordwood holds its heat at large. Let silence shadow you around the yard. Turn your back on the sawtooth dark.
Oh, beautiful.
So the sawtooth dark, you can see up there, it's that line,
Correct.
you know.
It's the forest.
It's the forest.
It's
doing
the
a
forest.
silhouette of a
Serrated edge.
saw. And for me, this painting was actually created in response to a request from Warren Kimball that I do a night scene for part of this project, and I love doing houses at night. And so I was looking at this house, and I was looking at that massive wood pile, which is the thing that you see in the in front of the house. And David Brin, who's a local forester, had said to me once, "Fuel of the People," and I thought, okay, so there it is. Once again, let's make a painting about that.
I had wondered about the title. Thank you.
Yeah,
That's
what
great.
it's just firewood.
It's just fire,
Yeah.
but it's the fuel of the people.
It is.
When I first looked at that picture, I thought this is an incredible combination of coziness and chill. You know,
Yeah.
the house is so cozy with the lights there, and then this snow. We've all been in that kind of snow.
Yeah, we know it's cold.
Up to our
Thighs.
Up to our thighs.
Yeah.
Yes.
Alas, not this winter.
Yeah.
Not this winter.
You know, but also Fuel of the People is the creative energy that makes Dan Ober carve, and the creative energy that makes Sally Ober the town clerk, you know, and keeping track of the vital statistics. You know, when I get my town report, I'm always looking at the births and marriages and deaths and the delinquent tax collectors report, and, you know, all of that, which is the fuel of life to me.
That's great.
Yeah.
We have a few more minutes. Are
great.
there kind of thoughts that you wanted to share, to include in this time of conversation about this whole experience? And
Yeah, it's been wonderful. We have one more image to share, Len.
Okay.
So I'll start there.
Good. Yeah.
This is a wildflower. So we started the program with a big, expansive image of the forest, and this is a tiny little image from the forest.
Aren't those called spring beauties?
This one is a hepatica, but
Oh, that's a hepatica,
I
right.
do love painting spring beauties. They have always been my favorite, and I started painting wildflower paintings when I was much younger, and we were sugaring. So we're spending a lot of time in the woods in the spring when the first things first started to emerge, and that was important to me.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
So that was that. Verandah, do you have anything to say in terms of this?
I just so appreciated going into my own unknown, which was the life of the forest as lived by all these people. And to see how Kathleen's effort, you know, because this is not easy, this ain't Photoshop.
No.
How her dedication also matched the dedication of the people who did that work, that this is shared labor and that is collaboration.
Well said.
Nicely said. That may be a good way for us to say thank you for this conversation. And thank you to all the people out there. I hope you really enjoyed becoming part of the conversation. And the exhibit is still on until?
This exhibit is on in Middlebury through April 30th.
April 30th.
And the catalog is available for purchase.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in the Vermont Bookshop. It's at the Folk Life Center. It's and you can probably, we're going to figure out how to make it available online as well.
And we'll be showing this all the way through the month of April.
Great. That will be wonderful. I hope people will get a chance to go and see, because looking at a picture in the flesh is an entirely different experience than seeing it either online or in a book or on TV.
Yeah. Well, we thank you for coming.
Thank you, Len.
Pleasure.
That was fun.
We thank all of you out there, and come back the next time.